Good evening, everybody. This is Sudhir Mishra in yet another episode of Sudhir Mishra Show. This is a very important episode for us. This is the 15th. We have done it in last 6 to 8 months. These dialogues, which have become very personal, which have become very empowering. And today we have with us senior advocate Mr. Iqbal Chhagla, who is one of the finest senior advocate which we have seen in our Supreme Court and in Mumbai High Court. And over the years, I am following his journey, and it was always my desire to get connected with him, learn about his journey, understand what are the principles he lived by. And we welcome Mr. Iqbal Chhagla, Senior Advocate. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Sudhir. Good evening.
Sir, this is a very emotional moment for business world and for me personally. Uh, I never had the privilege of practicing in Mumbai, but all the councils who have worked with you, all the youngsters who have worked with you, many of my friends who have practiced in Mumbai, they have been talking about your complete uh, dedication to the craft and also the original side rule which you normally do in the Mumbai High Court. But more than that, for me, the journey goes back 20 years back when I, for the first time, had a second-hand copy of this book, Roses in December.
Uh-huh.
And I'll tell you something very interesting. I didn't clear IAS in 98 and I was searching for books. I had read two autobiographies. I used to collect autobiographies from a very young age. And I had autobiography of a yogi. I had Mahatma Gandhi's autobiography. And I used to go to a particular shop in Nai Sadak in Delhi, which has old books. And he said, why don't you read this? You are coming into legal profession. And it was a depleted copy. I got that. I had underlined it. I think I lost it 10 years back. And everything, it had like a chapter, the bar. So how the first day of Justice Chagla was going into the bar. And it prepared me immensely to come into the legal profession. Sir, my gratitude to you and to your family. And this is my gratitude time to say that it really made a huge difference to the kind of journey which I want to do, the integrity, the grit, and the determination your father had. And you imbibed the same principles. So tell us about your early childhood. A lot of those stuff we know, but we want you, the viewers, the young law students, to know what was your early childhood, what were the memories of Mumbai, and what was like home.
My early memories of Sudhir are not when he was a puisne judge, which is when we lived at Walkeshwar, but when he became Chief Justice and we moved to Chief Justice House. A lovely, beautiful house. I stayed on the first floor. I had a room on the first floor and there was another room at the other end. And in between, there was my father's supplemental library. He had a huge library on the ground floor. And this was the library around which I lived and grew up. And I was free to pick up any book and read it. My mother sometimes used to be a little alarmed and told my father that you're spoiling him, that he shouldn't read anything that is vulgar. To which my father's thought was that there is no vulgarity in art or literature. So let him read what he wants. He'll become discerning in his own time. And he will read that which he ought to be reading. So those are my earliest memories of Chief Justice House. There was a lawn in front and a long lawn at the back. And very early memories of a father who was liberal, not just in ideas, but liberal in every day of his life, in how he acted and how he brought up his children. For instance, all of us could smoke in his presence. He never did not mind at all. And then later, when I was at a drinking age, we could have a drink together. And those are my early memories.
My goodness. Sir, one of the first thing which comes to my mind, and allow me to recite one or two Urdu poems here and there, and I'll make it very simple because that's something which we do in the show. His personality is something so unique, and you had a almost similar kind of journey. later you followed the same footsteps. Freedom fighter, jurist, worked for the entire, he became a judge, then comes into diplomacy, he becomes the high ambassador and then the high commissioner, and then he comes back to the practice after becoming the cabinet minister of education and I think one more ministry, and then he comes to the practice all over again.
Yes.
You brief him in Supreme Court, in fact. That is what I remember in one of the earlier memories in your forward, which you wrote in 2000.
Yes.
So it's a full life. In one life, you had such a freedom movement, and then a jurist, then a judge, then a politician. I think Justice Krishna Iyer had little bit of similarity, but it was such a, I would say the only word in Hindi is bargad. इतने बड़े बरगद के नीचे आपको स्थान मिला. How will you say this journey? What were your daily principles actually?
His daily principles?
Yeah.
I've never known a man of greater integrity, and I think this is a paramount virtue that he had of integrity. And he believed that everyone should make it on his own. So in the Supreme Court, as you said, when he returned to practice, he had a very large practice. And he would, in Bombay, come back and tell me that you're losing a lot of money, but you'll thank me for it. He said, advocates on record would say that, who would you like as a junior? So he would say that, please brief anybody you like. So yes. Don't you have a son practicing in Bombay? So he said, under no circumstances should you bring him. And he told me, he said, look, I don't want you to feel that you've succeeded because of my help. You must do it on your own, and you will thank me. And how true, how correct he was. And I thank him every day of my life.
Yes. And that is the, because I'll go to your journey but I remember when you wrote the forward in 2000, you talked about his health, you talked about how he dealt with life, you had a candid conversation about his approach towards the doctors,
yes.
And his complete freedom on that issue, his explanation about that you have everything, all of you are settled. And these are the principles which are very yogic, very Indian in nature, actually. And you were very settled with that response. But what I liked about this entire, the book talks about it, and some of the articles also talk about it. You and your father had a unique relationship. It was very friendly, like you said that you could smoke or you could have a drink with him, and then you started your own journey. And
yes.
And he saw you becoming a senior advocate at the young age of 39.
We had a certain chemistry, my father and I, which was unique. And I basked in his achievements and his greatness, and at the same time, I felt the pain of any disappointments that he had. Not that there were many, but because he had a remarkable life, the number of achievements, all that he did was, I think, quite exceptional. Yeah. And I was always, I idolized him, unashamedly, I must say. But that was to him. That's what he was to me. Yes. And when he retired and came to Bombay, we lived together here in this flat where we are.
Yes. So let's go to your journey. So there are many things which we know. So far, the practice of law is concerned, how much it changed when you started and the initial seniors you worked with, your memories with them who shaped you up, and original side is something you were very attracted to, and today it is something which you are a master to it. That's what most of the briefing councils tell us. So how was the journey which started becoming an advocate in 60s and then later? Just describe that initial journey of liking for law.
When I came back to Bombay after graduating from Cambridge University and being called to the bar, my father said, you must go and see the doyen of the bar, Sir Jamsetji Kangan. So I went along, and Sir Jamsetji told me, he said, I'm too old now, I've retired. So why don't you join Bhaba's chambers? So I went and requested K.H. Bhaba. And I think that was a great moment in my life, because there was no better teacher, hard taskmaster, which was excellent, what a young lawyer needs. And so that was the beginning. And it was a chamber where there was Fali Nariman, Soli Sorabji, a host of people who all had been offered judgeship. And it was said that it was an occupational hazard to be in chamber number 1 because you were bound to be asked to become a judge. So that was my early time. But I think there is no substitute for hard work. And this is what I would tell any young member of the bar. That after all, as I said, this profession is no bed of roses. Either it's all bed and no roses, or all roses and no bed. So that's how it is. So there's no substitute for that hard work. You may not get the roses in the beginning. You may feel frustrated, but it's a waiting game. It's a long wait. Sometimes it can be very long. And I always wondered which solicitor would be foolish enough to entrust me with a brief. But it happens. It's one of those contingencies in life which are not really explainable. But it comes. And my advice to every junior would be that please wait, don't be frustrated. It will come, your moment will come. And that's the moment when you are the starting point of your career.
Yeah. And that is why I'll read a very nice 2 lines from Rahat Indori, one of the finest shair. We lost him to COVID. लोग होठों पे सजाए हुए फिरते हैं मुझे, लोग होठों पे सजाए हुए फिरते हैं मुझे, मेरी शोहरत किसी अखबार की मोहताज नहीं.
It's such a beautiful language, Sudhir, but I must confess, my knowledge of Urdu is so pathetic.
I'll just tell you, he said that people know me by word of mouth.
Yes.
And I am not dependent on any media platform or a newspaper to canvass for me.
Oh, I see.
मेरी शोहरत किसी अखबार के मोहताज नहीं. So this is so apt. That's why we thought that, because some of the senior advocates who really like you, Parag Tripathi, Chetan Sharma, the moment they heard, they all are listening to it, they said, oh, the great, and the great I comes, and the way people respect you, that is what is your real learning, which you talked about. So what was, when you started your first 3 years, and that's a question we ask senior advocates normally, first 3 years, what was your routine like, a daily punishing routine, what was like?
Oh, it was to go to the chambers. Baba would, a solicitor would come and brief him, and after he left, he'd just toss the brief to one of us juniors, and we would read it, look it up, and the next day there would be a conference, or the day after, and we were expected to participate, and he was very good that way. So we did participate on the facts, and we would tell him what the facts were, what the law, as we understood it, and hopefully some solicitor might be impressed that this youngster might be worth briefing, even if it's a junior brief. And those are the small beginnings with which we start. And as I said, he was a hard taskmaster. We were there punctually at 10:30 in the morning, and we didn't leave till 7 or 7:30. And it was very interesting because we had the benefit sometimes of sitting in on a conference with Fali or Soli Sorabji had. And they would welcome me and say, of course, come in. And so this is all the learning at that stage. It was a wonderful experience and a wonderful chamber. But everybody was so tremendously helpful. They all went out of their way to help one. One had a problem, one would turn. There was a commercial law, one would turn to Fali. There was a writ court, one would turn to Soli. And Soli was, of course, he had an encyclopedic memory and case law. He would tell you the exact citation, not only the year, Bombay Law Reporter, the page, and whether it was the left column, the right column, the middle column. And there it is, exactly what one was looking for. So those are my early years. Yes, it was a lot of hard work with no income, but that's all right. One had to get used to the idea. And the advantages of not being born with a silver spoon.
Hmm.
As my father always told me, he said that I will not leave you much of an inheritance. All I can give you is an education.
Education. Yeah,
And
he
that's,
said. Yeah.
and that's exactly what he did. He
Ah.
gave us the best education anybody could ever have.
Hmm.
And then, as he said, the rest is now up to you. Fair enough. Fair enough.
And the best part is that the reason for really requesting you to come on this show was that when we see my generation and the younger generation, even in when I was in Campus Law Center, Delhi University, this privilege of being part of a family which has senior advocates or the judges of high courts or Supreme Court, I think sometime it becomes a barrier for your own personal growth or you're being free to work hard.
I'm
And
glad you mentioned that, Sudhir, because frankly, I was happy that I joined the bar after he ceased to be Chief Justice.
yes,
Uh, Otherwise, I would always have felt that I was being briefed because my father was the Chief Justice of the Bombay High Court.
yes,
So I joined the bar just after he had resigned as Chief Justice.
right. And he had a long tenure. He had almost like
17 years as
9,
a judge, 11
yeah,
years as Chief Justice.
11 years. Yes.
Yes.
So this part and the family gives you a cushion, but kind of, I think this was something which we have heard from even my father and my grandfather, that education was something which was the focus.
Yes.
Library was the focus. Music or some extracurricular activity was the focus. One thing which you wrote about your father's preparation, that once you mentioned that I didn't see him reading law books. What was the meaning of that?
No, he read literature. He said there's no point in reading law books. Law books I will look at when a matter is being argued before me. When the council cite a judgment, I read it at that time. And that's what he used to do.
Yeah.
So there's a story about him sitting with J.C. Shah. And when the appeal came up before them, J.C. Shah started asking questions. So he told the counsel, the appellant, he said that my brother is far more industrious than I am. He has read everything, I have read nothing. Please open your appeal for my benefit. And the counsel would be most grateful for that. And so he would never read anything in advance.
Amazing. Sir, we are coming to this very important part that once you settle down in Mumbai, there was a lot of charm of shifting to Delhi because you saw Fali shifting to Delhi, you saw Soli sir shifting to Delhi.
Yes.
And uh, you have answered this, but what is it? Is it Bombay too captivating for you, your memories, or uh, somehow you never felt the need for it?
No, well, this was our home, our friends were here. But Delhi, I always felt there was something about Delhi, like any capital city. It's, uh, it was not the sort of life that I could live.
Mm.
And I mean, I'm sorry, due apologies to all Delhiites, but it's too close to the power. And everybody in Delhi would always ask, not that who you were, what your income was. That was a main thing to find out whether you occupied some position or you didn't, and you were evaluated on that basis. Which, frankly, I found Delhi to be very corrosive in that way. It was too close to the seat of power. That was my resistance to going to Delhi.
Very, very clearly you said, sir, and that's a huge thing. Coming back to the mentoring part, when the youngsters were mentored, even now, that is one thing which Indian legal fraternity is quite proud of, that the senior advocates even now really mentor if they feel that somebody genuinely interested in the practice. What is the essential difference you see in the practice of Mumbai High Court and other high courts?
I think there's one greatest asset in the Bombay High Court is the fact that we have this system by which a young person, a young lawyer, joins the chambers of a senior. And by that, he begins to learn the law. He begins to understand how matters are conducted, how they should be conducted, what is the preparation. So it comes by association there. And this is a very important thing where the Bombay High Court its original side has contributed so greatly to some of the great lawyers in India today.
Hmm. That's true.
I'm starting with Motilal Setwal and Daftari and all the others, all products of the Bombay High Court.
And you had a very long tenure at the bar, sir, as the president of the High Court bar. Almost
Yes.
a decade you were, and those were very challenging times. Like for you, you took up issues, and the same kind of issues again. Your father had taken up in 1970s and 1975,
Yeah.
and they are not comforting issues. Everybody wants to skirt them. So it really helped because it created a debate and it solved a lot of things. Um, Leading a bar, what was your idea of normally you are not very keen to come in the front, and you like the dignity of the court, and you have been very you are one of the person whom people want to follow for the court craft and the respect of the court. But what was your idea behind the presidential elections of the Mumbai bar when you represented the bar?
So the only this that I felt that the Bombay Bar Association is the association, the sort of club of all original side lawyers, and it is important to lay down certain principles and perhaps set an example if one could. What are the important values which a lawyer should have?
Yeah.
Not that I'm not saying that I had them, but an attempt to pass that on to the younger generation of lawyers.
Yes.
And in some small way I've succeeded there. I'm a very happy man.
Yes. Yes. And when you say that one of the reasons for not thinking about Delhi was that you were very comfortable in Mumbai, so I think if it is true that you are constantly being pressurized to come to Supreme Court of India, even directly as a judge, it would have been difficult because you wanted to be in Mumbai.
Yes, and my family was more important than my own career, and I felt that very strongly.
Right.
And when I was asked to go to the Supreme Court, I mentioned that to my wife. She didn't say, "Oh God, no." I could see in her eyes though that she was worried and frightened. And I said, "That's more important than being a judge of the Supreme Court."
Brilliantly said, sir. Sir, tell me this entire thing that a lawyer used to have a life, like you mentioned when you were talking about in the self meeting, we were talking about Soli, sir. You
Yes.
said that he had a taste in music. You have a huge taste in music. You really like Western music.
Yes.
What is your advice to people who are very tense about legal profession, who really put long hours, that how do they develop themselves in an all-round manner? Because this is something which has to happen to keep it more balanced.
So it is so important for young lawyers to know that the law is not the beginning and the end.
Yes.
There's a life outside the law, and you must have that life.
Yes.
You must, literature, what you read is important, music, as you mentioned, all of that, extremely important to be a well-rounded person. Otherwise, you are unidirectional. It's just the law, and the law.
And so one of the thing which most of these even younger lawyers who are into 60s or maybe my age, I have seen that there are few of them who have a story around them, like you have a story around you, and that creates a huge impact in their entire personality and practice. Like people like Parag Tripathi who loves to recite Urdu, or they have learned it from even seniors who used to travel a lot, or somebody was like collecting coins. So you think that this creates a more rounded personality, and
Yes.
it can't be taught as a soft skill in law schools, unfortunately.
No, it can't. No. Yeah. All this happens outside.
Yes.
And by precept and example.
So few of the examples you have said we know, few of the examples we don't know. Soli sir, we know, we know. Who are the other examples, even much older people whom you have met, who had a more well-rounded personality, or they had very different taste of traveling or whatever?
Well, Purushottam Trikamdas was one who practiced in the Supreme Court. I've known him since childhood. One of the advantages of being my father's son was that I came into close contact with these very senior people.
Hmm.
Holidays, I think I wrote about it, were always Mahabaleshwar in the summer.
Yeah.
Where we would go by car, and the car would be parked in the garage, never to be taken out. We would just go for long walks all the time. And there, all the judges of the Bombay High Court, they would also gather. So just meeting them, seeing them was a great privilege. And here I realized that such great men, but they were so simple in what they did. Like Justice Tendulkar would take us for a walk around the lake at Mahabaleshwar. And at an appointed place, he would say, now we eat jambu. And there was a jambu tree there. And we were on the jambu, at the jambus. So these are some of the small memories that I have of my younger days growing up.
So ultimately, sir, it all comes to that how simple we can keep it, uncomplicated, uncluttered, and
Yes.
absolutely simple. And I think this is the journey which is important. And about the book, I want to say one more thing. I know that Hindi or Urdu is not something, but I'm so tempted. I had 5, 6 of them, but I've rejected all of them. I just want to read this one, which is so nice.
Yes.
Amrita Pritam, one of the Punjab's most celebrated poetess, she
Yes.
said, अगर किसी इंसान को अपनी सही जीवनी लिखनी हो तो उसे चाहिए खाली कागजों पे खून छिड़क दे। अगर किसी इंसान को अपनी सही जीवनी लिखनी हो तो उसे चाहिए कि खाली कागजों पे खून छिड़क दे। What Amrita Pritam said, that a real autobiography is an autobiography if it is absolutely from the heart. It bleeds from the heart.
Yes. Yes.
And I wanted to say that about roses in the summer, actually.
The beautiful lines. Beautiful
Beautiful
lines.
lines. And she was far ahead than she and Kafi Azmi, who was in Mumbai mostly at that time, who have talked about the being women. They were so progressive in the 40s and 50s. And I find her poetry beyond time, like they are relevant now. And that's what I felt. So I thought about this book, which is perhaps the only autobiography across the world, one of the few autobiographies which has such a gives you a complete picture, like Discovery of India of Jawaharlal Nehru or few other books who are in comparison to that. So, of course, the book was the basis of our interaction. But what do you think the potential in today's generation of lawyers? And what is their journey you are looking at, and what do you expect from them?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
My parting questions are, sir,
Yeah.
that from today's youngsters who are coming in legal professions or
Yeah.
even younger lawyers, what are your expectations? What are your suggestions to them for excelling in life and career?
Most of all, integrity. They must possess the duty to the court to be absolutely candid, clear, and never mislead the court. There is no greater sin than that in my book.
Yes.
You will never be forgiven. Word will go around, people will know that this is not a lawyer, word can be taken. And that ultimately is the acid test, whether a judge will believe you or not. Not in your argument, but in whatever statement you make on the law. And there is no substitute for that, just as there is no substitute for hard work and patience. Two great virtues, but my God, they're difficult. And I know how difficult it is.
Yes.
And I've had the privilege and the benefit of having outstanding juniors, and I owe so much to them in everything that I have achieved in my profession. I've had excellent juniors, and they've always ensured that there's never been a misleading statement of the law.
Yes.
I was very firm about that.
Absolutely. So at this note, I'll just ask a final question. You traveled a lot, you studied abroad. Which are the places which you really were fascinated in India when you traveled there? And few of the international places which you feel that everybody should travel if they have the resources or time?
I think in India, Kerala definitely, and of course Jammu and Kashmir. Kashmir. Oh, was beautiful. Because Kashmir combines both Switzerland and Venice. It's outstandingly beautiful.
Hmm.
And it's such a shame that what is happening in Kashmir. There are lovely people, but it's sad. It's sad.
And any international favorite place, sir?
I think Italy is one of our favorites.
Yeah. That was the last country I visited before the pandemic. Yeah. So thank you a lot, Mr. Iqbal Chagla, for this wonderful interview and for your time, for your generosity in agreeing to meet a lawyer who is a first generation lawyer coming from a very small city, Banaras, and trying to settle in Delhi. I'm also very unsettling. I don't really like the city, but I have no choice. But I'll work harder and will be promising you that I'll continue with my integrity and my hard work, sir.
Thank you, Sudhir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir. Wonderful.
And I wish you all the very best.